So yes, I'm Molly Broadway. I'm with an agency called Disability Rights Texas. Have any of y'all heard of that before? Okay, cool. What I do, Disability Rights Texas in general, if you're not familiar with who we are what's called a protection advocacy agency. And so there's one of us in every state. And basically, as a result of some federal legislation in 1977, protection advocacy agencies were created, and we are the one for the state of Texas. So what does that mean? My really quick summation is, like, we exist to help protect the civil rights of people with disabilities in the state of Texas. There's a whole bunch of different ways to do that. We cover a bunch of different avenues. What I do is I work on our HAVA program, which stands for the Help America Vote Act. Can anybody tell me what that means? What? Yes? No, but what does it? Can somebody tell, does anybody know what the HAVA Act is? HAVA, sorry. I may have already told you. It's the Help America Vote Act. And basically that was, if you remember the Bush-Gore election in 2000, right? This is all the stuff we do. Yes, you try not to, probably. Due to that debacle that happened, some more federal legislation was created called the Help America Vote Act. And so part of what that entails is to make sure that everybody has the access to and ability to cast their ballot independently and privately. And so that's where I come in. So my job is funded through the HAVA program, or the Help America Vote Act, and I am here to go around the state of Texas and talk to people about what their voting rights are, the types of accommodations they can receive, and then also I work with individuals who help run elections, like y'all, to help kind of just remind everybody about the services that are to be offered or can be offered if requested to voters. And then also maybe I'm gonna also talk about maybe some updates to legislation in this last year. I've tried to suppress that one as well, so yeah. I kind of do with all legislative sessions. So why is this an important thing to be talking about? I don't know. Do y'all have any thoughts on it? Do y'all think it's an important thing to talk about? I'm gonna encourage y'all to interact, so just get ready for that. So. Cool. Why, I saw lady in the white sweater. You may be my ringer for the day. So why is this important? Why do you think it's an important topic?
Because we have a lot of elderly that are disabled,
Okay.
and we have a larger community of disabled individuals, and we've seen them trying to come to the polls to vote.
Yes.
But a lot of elderly are disabled.
Right, absolutely.
And they're not thought of that way.
Right. So there's a lot of people who are affected by this. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, well,
Some of the answers might be right there.
I'm stunned that almost 60% of voters have a disability.
Yes.
So what kind of things does that include?
That's a little bit of I mean, that's, you know, in the state of Texas, the election code, disability doesn't have a very strict definition. And through the census, it's kind of just dependent upon self-reporting. But generally, when we speak of disability, I'm talking about anything that impedes your daily functioning. And that can range from a physical disability where it's hard to get around. It could be what I will later refer to as like an invisible disability, that maybe it's affected your brain development or your behavioral status. It could be mental. It could be physical. It could be a little, you know, it's the whole shebang across the board. But I think that just goes to show, like you said, the statistics are pretty impressive. In Texas, about 59.4, 60% of voters had a disability in the last presidential election. So, studies have found that the number of people who have disabilities that are voting it's only increasing over time. So I think that number is only going to go up. And when every year I have to sit down for our reporting purposes and do a lot of math and figure out how many registered voters in the state of Texas we estimate have a disability. And I think the latest number is up there, 2 million. And I forget how many we currently have as a whole in the state of Texas. It might be like 5. But those are, yes, ma'am, and you had a question.
51.4%. How do you know who's disabled?
This is self-reporting. This particular study was done by, let's see if I have the notes on me. This particular study was done by Rutgers University in New Jersey, and they have a whole department where they do studies every 4 years about presidential elections for the disability communities. So it was self-reporting, and then it was also in conjunction with another organization called Self-Advocates Becoming Empowered, which is a self-advocacy group for people with disabilities, and it was the national studies, but we broke it down to Texas populations, so I kind of cross-multiplied that with the statistics of how many people in the state have disabilities versus how many registered voters there are in the state, and so that's what we came up with. My math teachers would be super impressed and proud with me right now. Yes, sir.
Now, is that number based on people who actually voted or the total number? Because if it's the people who actually voted, all of us here can state the majority of people who come are well over the age of 45.
Which number? The 2 million?
59.4.
So they're well over the age of 49, okay. But that means disability isn't, I mean, as you know, it's not restricted to an age. It's not restricted to what you see.
But older people tend to be disabled more so than
Okay.
the younger.
I think it's also if those people identify as having a disability. So there's that as well. The numbers are probably realistically larger.
But is that based on actual voters?
Yes.
That voted that
Yes.
way?
Yes. Good questions. Yes, ma'am.
What's wrong with mail-in voting? You know, I vote, my husband and I both vote.
Right?
We just apply.
Okay.
And we get our ballots.
Uh-huh.
We're in the privacy of our own home.
Right.
We have an opportunity to discuss the issues over
Right.
the kitchen table.
Right.
And a cup of coffee.
Right?
And so we don't have to go down to the polls.
Right? So the question is what's wrong with mail-in voting and doing it that way? If you qualify,
More mail-in for the elderly.
why are we not encouraging more mail-in ballots for the elderly? Well, I think it's a personal choice. I'm trying to think of the word. It's a compacted answer. There's been, as you all are aware, about a year ago, right, 2 years ago, a whole bunch of new laws came out about mail-in ballots and mail-in applications and how you access those. And there was a lot of confusion about what is allowed, what's not allowed, a lot of trepidation on voters' parts about if they do this, are they going to get busted for some unnecessary reason? Are they going to be penalized if they try to get help from somebody when they're voting at home? Is that person going to be penalized for some unnecessary reason because they didn't sign the right box, or they did sign a box, but they weren't supposed to sign a box? And it's also a matter of personal choice. Some people really enjoy going out into the community and having that civic service, that civic duty experience, and they really like to see their neighbors and their community members and do it. So it's up to the individual. Texas is a couple of the states where it is there's an eligibility process for mail-in ballots. So that's why. It's up to the individual, basically. Yes, ma'am.
Most problem I saw, and I don't know if you're going to address it, is cast private and independent ballot.
Yeah.
That's
We will talk about that some. Yes, thank you for bringing that up. Yes, ma'am.
Getting back to how you determine who is disabled.
Yeah.
You
Not
have
always.
their statistics.
No, and we'll talk about that. That's a great, and thank you for bringing that up. And I think a lot of people feel that way as how do you determine a disability status on the individual? Is their age? Is it their appearance? And the key, my big answer is there's no actual way to determine one's disability because it's across the gamut. You know, some people you can see, like my poor mom, I drag her around, I pick on her all the time when she's not around. She has scoliosis and rheumatoid arthritis, and she had to raise me as a child, so she's, you know, she's got some burdens to carry. But to look at her, you would see that she has some mobility issues. And so to look at her, you're like, okay, if she's standing in line, I'm going to ask if she wants to move to the front or if she needs a chair to sit down in. That's pretty obvious. But I also have a friend who had an injury, and he is mobile, but because of the injury, he can't sweat. His sweat glands don't work. It's weird, yeah. I didn't ask details, but that's what happened. And so he can't stand in line outside. But to look at him, he's a pretty healthy looking dude on the front, but he can't sweat. And if you live in Texas, you gotta sweat. So he often has to ask for physical accommodations for that purpose. So there's no real way to tell. And as you'll see later, the big golden rule is it's you know, the voter themselves are the best navigator of what they need. And so when I go out to trainings, I try to encourage people to voice what they need to election workers, saying this is what you need. Don't be afraid to let people know. This is why they're here. And if they don't say anything, but you want to ask, there's no harm in asking. You know, I feel like sometimes I'd rather be asked. And if I'm too shy to bring up a need, sometimes it helps if I'm prompted. But I do it in a very general way. I encourage people to do it in a very general way. So there's that. There was a hand up here. No, you're good? Answered it. I'm so good. I preemptively answered your question. Okay, awesome. This is good. Thank you for interacting. So what are our goals for today? Basically, my goal for today with y'all is to be able to go out into the world of voting, and y'all are going to be able to, regardless of the individual support need, provide the services that they may be requesting or the accommodations that they need, and then also encourage that individual to have a positive voting experience. Excuse me, I ate a big old donut before I came. I'm hoping that, yes, so it's coming back. Respond appropriately, respond effectively to individuals respectively. And then also just the goal of having a general idea. I have no doubt and full trust in the El Paso election system here. But knowing what the individual's rights are, kind of having more familiarity with it and stuff like that. And if you have questions, let's ask them. This is the time to get all your curiosities out. So, 6 basic guidelines. That's right. I'm going to test you all on this later, so write down these notes. I'm not. Creating a culture of dignity and respect. I think that's what I try to do whenever I interact with people. It boils down to your general golden rule. Treat others as you want to be treated. So how do we provide a culture of dignity and respect? There's a lot of different ways, but I'm here to kind of talk about some of the highlights of that. The first one is use people-first language. When I talk about people-first language, does anybody kind of have an understanding of what I'm referring to? Because in my world, we're really into that. But let me explain that a little bit. For those who are not aware of the jargon I'm using, people-first language was a movement that happened a while ago. So instead of saying that guy in a wheelchair, you can refer to the person by their name, or you could say that person who has a mobility impairment, or that person who is in a wheelchair. You know, it's focusing on the individual first and not the disability, basically. So I have a friend who says, the Downs kid. And I was like, no, oh my God, no. First of all, the individual has a name. Let's figure out who they are. And then if you have to refer to them by, what they're dealing with in life, you could say that person who has Down syndrome. Or it's more, the individual is so much more. Basically, it's knowing that the individual is so much more than what the disability status is. So you just want to be treated as a person, as a whole person, and that's what that's basically focusing on. Also know, we try to avoid improper, outdated terms. I'm sure everybody knows, well, if you're not, like the R word, retarded, we don't do that anymore. That's a big no-no, so don't do that. And we'll kind of talk about that. If you're looking for a label, we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Or just someone came up to me a couple years ago and said, what did they say? This person was, they were dumb, but they meant muted and not able to speak proficiently. And I was like, okay, I get what you're saying, but that isn't the language we use now. We kind of just say, they can't communicate effectively or efficiently to you. Because communication's different. If any of you raise children, you know, like your kid has, like, I have a 4 and 5-year-old, and my kids, before they had a proper language, they could communicate just fine without words. They got the idea across, but they just weren't using the words. And their teachers would be really frustrated. I was like, oh, they're communicating. It's just not the same language that you're using. So, keeping that in mind. Some people, some disability communities, some people with disabilities, they have terms, you know, that they like to use for themselves, labels that they like to use for themselves, and that's cool, that's up to them. But, you know, it is assumed, don't assume that you can use that language as well. So I think a lot of communities in general are trying to take ownership of some of these words and turn it from a negative into a positive. And generally speaking, cool. Like, I would never use some of the language that other community groups use because I'm not part of that community or I'm not dealing with that issue. And so, but it's up to that individual how they want to use it. And so if they want to use it, great. Like, cripple is a big movement in the disability community. Some people are taking ownership of it back. I'm never going to use the word cripple to somebody to identify someone, but if that's their choice on the language they want to use, cool. But I'm not ever going to do that. I always stick with people first language, or as I like to call it, name first language. Language and invisible disability. We touched on that briefly. We're going to get on it a little bit more. Like I said, most people just want to be called by their name. I imagine everybody here would prefer to be called by their name as opposed to some other adjectives that are out there. If it is necessary to identify a person by what is going on about their ability, ask them how they want to do that. How do you want me to identify your ability, or how do you want me to explain that? You know, so like if someone comes to vote and they need assistance, and you need to explain to someone how to help them, ask them what's the best way to, how can we express to this assistant or whomever how to best help you? Or just ask the individual to do it themselves because they know what's going to work best for them. Just ask. That's always what I say. I ask a lot of questions in my life if I don't know what's going on. That was probably the bane of my teacher's existence as I was growing up. But if I didn't know, I was always encouraged just to ask. And I think there's a lot more welcome attitudes towards that to educate yourself. And just, you know, if you don't know what to do, just ask somebody. Just ask the individual you're interacting with. There's a lot to be said for that. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. Invisible disabilities. This is a term that's thrown around a lot. Have y'all heard that before? Okay. What does that mean to y'all? Does anybody have any input on that? Yes, sir.
I have an invisible disability.
Okay, you have an invisible disability. Okay. And what does that mean, if you want to share?
Sure. Because of an operation, I have nerve damage to my back, and that means that my entire upper left thigh, I have no feeling.
Right.
And that's affected my ankle. And so sometimes when I walk, I wobble.
Yeah.
Today, I need my cane.
Right.
And I can tell immediately when I wake up, the moment I put my foot down, I know that it's going to be a
It's
good
a cane
day or
day.
a bad day.
Yeah. Gotcha. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. And to look at you, one would not assume that, especially because you're not using your cane today. Yes, absolutely. Thanks for sharing. Anybody else have any thoughts on the matter? Yes, sir.
Something else, it's not visible.
It's not
So you
visible.
can't, somebody walks in and, you know, you see them and maybe they have mental disability.
Right. Yes. Someone
But
has.
just by looking at it, you know, you would.
Right. Absolutely. I have, so the answer was, someone may have a mental disability, and just by looking at them, you can't tell what's going on. Yes, ma'am.
I have MS, and so everybody can't see my disability because I'm able to walk and function normally, but I have all this other stuff going on inside.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, and thank y'all for sharing. It's a lot of it is basically we've gone around the racetrack once or twice, right? It's not our first rodeo here. So chances are, we all know there's it's like the iceberg kind of a thing, you know? It's like the analogy with the iceberg. There's this little tip that you see, but underneath the water, there's a whole giant iceberg that could be miles long, but we don't know what's going on. So there's 1,000 things going on with the person that we don't even know just by looking at them. And so I think it's, you know, going back to, I always say it's the golden rule of treatment. If you would love a letter opener, there you go. Thank you. Yeah. Just treat everybody with dignity and respect. I think that's all how we want to be treated. And it's just, you know, be gentle when we need to be gentle. And treat everybody with respect. Like I said up there, it's not immediately apparent, these invisible disabilities. And there has been a change in terminology that also links to invisible disabilities. It used to be mental retardation was a big one, but it kind of morphed into an intellectual disability is the new terminology. And so when I say intellectual disability, we're talking about something that, did you have your hand up, sir? No? Okay, just imagined it. Intellectual disability, what's that?
My aura.
It's green, it's very good. Yes, ma'am.
We usually just ask, so that when Pat's voting, we have to take out the necessary equipment to the vehicle.
Right.
And you can almost swear that they're not disabled.
Right.
But at the same time, you can't tell them no, but you're not really supposed to ask if they're disabled or not. Right?
Correct.
You're just supposed to say, okay, and then go do the thing, and then.
Yeah.
But you think, you might not see it.
Right.
You know, but they might be disabled or might not be disabled, just taking advantage of the situation. too.
Yeah, and so that question,
Ask all the time.
that's true, you cannot just ask all the time. That was a good point. That question comes up a lot. About curbside voting, you go and you bring out the ballot to the individual, and sometimes it looks like maybe they don't qualify for curbside voting. But you know, my answer to that is it's not our job to distinguish how a person qualifies. It is our job to help them cast a ballot. And you know, you've done your job, you've cast the ballot, you've done your job, and if some other conflict arises, that's why you have these lovely full-time paid staff at the elections, what do you call it? The El Paso Elections Office. There it is. There's too many E's. I can't, the spotlight's on me, there's too many E's, it's a lot going on. I see his arm, and then I'm going to come to you. Yes, sir.
Yeah, you're talking about the invisible disability. A lot of people don't understand too, there might be a problem at home. There might be a problem with the kids. There might be a problem with their dad or mom or whoever's
Absolutely.
going in there, and nobody knows what they're going through.
Yeah.
But they're going in there to vote, you know.
They're just trying to do their voting. That's it.
You know, it's like curbside, they need to get at it because they need to get home to take care of their kids or mom or dad or whatever,
Yeah.
you know.
Like you can't tell, but I'm a ball of anxiety right now because I have so much stuff going on at my home life.
Keep that frustration inside where they don't let people know.
Right.
You know what they're going through. That's a disability right there too.
Yes, I'm going to come to you. Then I saw your hand. I'm going to come back to you real quick. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to piggyback off of what he said. A lot of times people come in with stress, just the stress of voting.
Yeah, absolutely.
I always told them, kind of be prepared when you come.
Yes.
So you don't have that stress. And they're like, I don't know what to do. What's going on with the system?
Right.
And, they just
The anxiety of it can be huge.
They feel like they need to vote because of their responsibility, but they feel overwhelmed in making the decision.
Absolutely.
To vote for.
Absolutely, and that's a big thing. Is, like the anxiety of going out and casting a ballot, especially if you haven't done it with the new voting machines, or you're just nervous because of the new laws. That's a whole thing, and people may bring somebody with them for support, and that's fine too. But that's good. That's keeping in mind what everybody's going through. Yes, ma'am.
Which is San Elizario, we have, I want to say 3 or 4 voters, and a couple of them are deaf. And we know them by sight already because we've been there for over 10 years. And we ask them every time, would you like to have an interpreter?
Right.
And he and she always say, no, we're good, you know, I don't know how to sign, but we can
Right,
communicate.
you make it happen,
Yeah,
yeah.
we make it happen. And we also have one person who is blind, and they come in, you know, blind and all, with their, whoever happens to be with their provider or whatever. And, you know, they're just the same people that come in. We treat them like they're the same, no disability,
Yeah.
you know, nothing at all. And they're happy to be there. Well, they like us there. They can go anywhere to vote, and they come there, you know, because one of them comes out of work, and he works all the way downtown, but he goes to vote there.
Yeah,
Because he feels comfortable with, we're there, and we give him respect, which is what we should do to them and to any elderly or not elderly person who has
Right.
a disability.
and I think that brings up an important point. You know, sometimes, like if you have someone who's deaf, they may not want an interpreter, and that's cool. Or you assume that maybe they want, like, if someone's blind, they want some visual assistance. They may not. That's cool. It's up to them. And I think that's the perfect way to handle it. Let the individual decide. Yes, sir.
I like the phrase "just ask," but earlier you talked about communication and the dialogue. You have to know how to ask properly.
Yes.
Sometimes there are high-functioning individuals that may get offended just in the manner that you ask.
Right.
I'm not disabled, or
Yeah.
they're high-functioning. They want to be treated as equal.
Yes.
And so it's
It's a fine line, and I think we walk that no matter what we're doing in life properly, probably. And so I think the solution to that would be, you know, try to be as polite as possible or as generalized as possible. And I think, you know, I've seen it. People are like, I don't need help. I know you think I do, and they kind of get offended. But, you know, I don't think it's going to keep them up at night, probably. So, yes, ma'am.
We got to keep in mind when you're talking to the disabled person, to talk to them and not to the person that they're.
Yeah. Look at that. Did you sneak a copy of this already? Yes. Speak directly to the individual. That's an important part. Sometimes we find address and speak directly to the voter. Sometimes we'll find that somebody may have an assistant with them or whatever. They have somebody with them. Don't speak to that individual who's with them. Don't speak to the companion. Speak directly to that person. I was doing a job fair one time, and I was a sighted guide for somebody. So I was basically bringing him table to table, and he was blind. And we would go and do the thing, do the job search thing, and people would come, like the employers would ask me what he wants. I was like, I don't know anything about this dude. I'm just showing him where the tables are. You should ask him what's going on with his job search. I don't know anything. He's right here. You ask him yourself. And I think that's the same way. If we're being talked about, I think we all want to be spoken to directly, probably. We want to be asked these questions directly. You know, like I went to the doctor one time with something went down, and a friend had to take me to the doctor, and they were asking the friend all these questions. I was like, I'm right here. It's happening to me. Why don't you just ask me what's going on? I bet I know better than the person who drove me here. Greet everybody with a smile. It looks like y'all are doing that. I have, after all of our interactions so far, I have full faith in everybody and their abilities here. It's not your first rodeo. Right. Probably not your last one. So there, you got some dust on your boots. How's that for a Texas euphemism? And then just accommodate the voters. Like, instance, you were saying your voters who are deaf, you don't know sign language or ASL, but you make it work somehow. You communicate it with whatever effective means works for y'all. And that could be writing stuff. It could be an unofficial type of sign language, or, you know, you'll make it happen. And I think that's what's most important, is you are communicating effectively, whatever that looks like. I've gone over this. I've probably beat this phrase, I've beat it as a dead horse at this point. Treat everybody with respect. Show professionalism. I feel like y'all are going to be doing that. Y'all have been pretty nice to me so far. So thanks for practicing that golden rule with me. Extension, like mobility devices or any kind of aid that the individual uses. So like, I'm going to pick on you, sir. Hit me if not. But like when you use your cane, that is basically an extension of you, so to speak. And so if I'm interacting with you, you probably don't want me to grab your cane and just do whatever with it.
No.
Yeah. There's a really funny video I didn't have time to put on here, but I've shown it previous years if you've been with us previously while I'm here. And it's like there's a video of these two people, they're working at an office and they're working at a desk, and there's a woman who uses crutches, and there's a fly that lands on the thing. It's swarming around and it's really annoying. And the fly lands on the desk, and the guy who isn't using the crutches grabs the woman's crutch and like slams it down on the fly and kills the fly. And the woman's just like, what the heck? You just used my crutch. And so that is to illustrate that, yeah, your example was priceless. If you didn't see her face, she was like, what the heck? That's how it is. It is an extension of that individual's body. It is helping them complete a task. And so, let's respect it like that. Same thing with if someone is in a scooter or a wheelchair, if you need to, sometimes if don't grab the wheelchair, don't grab the scooter, don't try to push them anywhere, don't try to lean up on it if you're getting up. It happens. Stuff like that. If they, don't grab if they have a speaking device, don't grab their device and start typing into it. Yes, ma'am.
Voting has been lowered and they're not close enough, then you can ask them, may I move you up just a little bit? And they say yes.
Absolutely.
You can just ask.
It's perfect. Just ask them if you can move them up. And sometimes, if the individual is blind or visually impaired and they need guidance in going somewhere, don't just grab their arm. You can say, would you like to take my arm and I'll guide you. As much as I can enjoy from time to time a good manhandling, not always my choice. Yes, sir.
I think there's many people that still want to feel self-sufficient.
Absolutely.
Okay, and when you try to do what they don't want you to do, okay, they feel like you're putting them down.
Absolutely. I think that's a good point. Everybody still wants to feel autonomous and self-sufficient. I don't think anybody wants to, if they don't have to, they don't want to have to rely upon another person. And so to try to take control of that tool that's helping the individual kind of takes away that self-sufficiency. Absolutely. Good point. And I'm going to tell you one quick story, because that's all I got in my life for stories, which is a good job I have this position. But I used to, at a previous job, my boss had some physical impairments, but she used a scooter to get around a lot. And it was, so in her office building, she kind of kept her scooter parked near her office. And there was like a retirement party for somebody after hours. And so it was after hours, we were at the retirement party, and then this kid, I say, new hire, whatever, he wanders over to where my boss's office is and comes out of the hallway, and he's riding her scooter. Yeah, exactly, that's what I thought. And I was like, oh, he's so going to get fired. How can this even happen? I was shocked. I couldn't even imagine that this was happening. But yeah, I think that's the perfect reaction. And somebody stopped him. I was flabbergasted and just kind of standing there. And secretly, between you and I was waiting for him to get fired for it. But somebody stopped him and was like, what the heck are you doing? This isn't, first of all, it's not yours. Second of all, it's somebody's so-and-so uses this to get around. This is insane. Don't do this. And so your gasp was the proper reaction. So good job. But that is a perfect example of abusing a situation and not doing whatever. Now, I used to ask my boss for pumps whenever she'd pass me by, and that was fine because she thought it was funny. But she never did give me a pump, by the way. I'm going old school with the bike situation. So this is another thing that comes up, service animals. And those in the back who are keeping time, let me know when I'm running out, perhaps. But service animals come up a lot. It's a big question. And I can tell you, long story short, there is a link that I can provide. Melissa, I can provide it to you. But there's the Americans with Disabilities Act. in the Department of Justice, they have this whole guideline about what is a service, what is a service animal and what is not a service animal. And sometimes there's a lot of questions about emotional support animals. And I can tell you this, service animals, so you got to let a service animal in because they are performing a service, a task to that individual. An emotional support animal, not necessarily providing a job or a task for that individual. So, in terms of animals, let the service animal in. And, you know, the question that you can ask is what is the job that animal does for you? That is what you can ask an individual. But that's about it. Otherwise, the only other thing is if the animal is being unruly, so it has to be a dog. A service animal is actually a dog. Not a squirrel. They're squirrely and they're hard to train. But I have seen water skiing squirrels, and I would probably trust that one. So sometimes I use my children as emotional support or service animals. It's true. That's why you got to use them for something. So I will say if an animal's being unruly, that is when you can ask them to leave. So if the animal's like humping your leg or something or out of control barking and there's not a cause for it, that's when you can ask the owner of the service animal to send the animal outside or to excuse the animal from inside the building if it's being unruly and disruptive. No questions from you. So there's that. And also just know, I'll come back to you. Also know that they don't have, service animals don't have to have identification. They don't have to have a harness or a vest or anything like that. It's not required. There's not a certification process that exists. It's just they've been trained. That person probably paid some really good money for that animal. And so let them do their job. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so let's say.
No.
They.
Uh-uh.
Mostly all service animals have something that identifies I'm a service animal. But there are some that you know they're not, right? So what do you do in that situation?
I don't know if they, well, so I'll say this. People, because my office serves as a polling site, and I'm there when we do the voting. And there's people that walk, and it's Austin. People love their dogs in Austin. I don't, but they do, and that's cool. So people walk in with their dogs, and you're like, okay, should I make it think, it's not my job. I'm not running the voting show, you know. Just as an employee of Disability Rights Texas, there's county staff that are doing it, and I'll leave it up to them. But my thing is also, if it's not creating a huge hazard and if it's not creating a problem and it's okay with the building, then just let them go. Because I would assume everybody probably wants the least amount of conflict as possible when you're running elections. So I think that's always the goal. If it gets them out, if it gets them in and gets them out, and they cast their ballot, cool. If the animal starts like peeing inside, ask the person to get the animal out. Yeah. And clean it, yes, absolutely, yes. Fun story. Yes, ma'am.
Have you been aware of an incident where the dog is unruly and then you ask him to take him out?
I have not, but that's not to say that it doesn't exist. It just hasn't been brought to my attention.
Because I wonder if I had that situation and I asked them that they have to go outside. Their first question or their answer might be, I don't have anybody to watch them outside and I want to vote.
Right.
So how do you handle that?
So I would say, if it's somebody who is using this animal as a service animal, they know, you know, and they should probably be aware of it. And if it's a matter of like, I still want to vote, maybe if there's availability, ask, you know, can you have another election worker hold it outside, or can someone hold it while you go vote? That's out, you know, so another voter can hold it for you, and you can come out, or take a minute, you know, and calm down the dog, and then bring them back inside, and we can, you know, we'll get you in line and make it happen. Yes, ma'am.
So basically, we cannot ask them if that's a service animal. That's what you're saying.
Right. You can ask them what is what's the job that this animal does. If this is, I would say, if this is your service animal, can you tell me what job it does for you? And they can, and that's what you can ask. Other than that, that's about it.
But only if they're unruly, right? Only if they're
No, I mean, if they walk in, let's say there's like, they're in queue, they're in line, and they come up to your check-in table, and they got a dog, you're like, oh, is this a service animal? What task does this animal do for you? You can ask that. And if it is a service animal, don't try to give it any treats or anything. Don't pet it. Don't try to paint its toenails. It's busy working. Yes, ma'am.
So let's say you have the animal and you're asking the person what task it does for you. Isn't that like asking what is your disability?
Not necessarily. And it's been approved, it's been legally approved to ask that question. So not necessarily, like it could just say, let's say I have like PTSD or something and the dog can pick up on that before I have an attack or something. I can say this dog just lets me know when I'm about to have a reaction to something. And if it becomes problematic, call the county staff. That's why they're here. And it might be good just to print out that when I send that thing to you, it might be good just to have that on hand because it's very clear. It helps designate a lot of stuff. Yes, so there you go. Or it could be like one of my dogs. He's so big, I feel like I could ride him everywhere. If I could get a saddle to fit him, I would do it. So provide assistance without judgment. We've been talking about that ongoing. Like we've said, not all voters who may want help, so don't assume that they're going to need an accommodation or assistance. Not all disabilities are readily apparent. A voter can disclose to you what their disability is if they want to, but they don't have to be required to, basically. If the voter decides they would like some help, they are entitled to it within a reasonable stature. There's a provision in the election code that is the reasonable accommodation. And actually, I think I have it on a slide later on. It's basically saying that a voter can ask for help or some sort of accommodation if they need it, as long as it is within reason. So what would not be in reason is if I say, hey, I'm really thirsty. Could you go get me a Gatorade and then stand on your head while you're feeding it to me while I go vote? That's probably not very reasonable. Or could I come when the polls close, when nobody's around so I'm less anxious? That's not legal, so we can't do that. Don't ask them why they need the assistance. If you can do it, just provide it for them. And chances are they're going to be really impressed and they're going to come back and vote at your site. So so we basically covered all that. Yes, sir.
I have observed over time that one of the best assistance to a disability, which has to do with reading what's on the ballot, about 99% of the time I have found that when the people see the ballot and the letters are very small and everything is compact,
yes,
that if you don't ask them and let them know that they can have the large letters, they may stay there for 30 minutes because they're trying to slobber their way through that.
Yeah.
And in a way, it's kind of a judgment call. It's only backfired maybe 1 or 2 times, but the other 1,000 times has proven to be very successful.
Yes.
So you kind of have to take a chance of letting them know that they have that option. And almost every time when I show them they can have the large letters, they're saying, no one ever told me.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm so glad you brought that up. We'll bring it up. There's so many tools within that voting machine that voters don't always know about. And so to educate them and let them know, it's amazing. Like I have a coworker who is blind, and she didn't know that you could use headphones because she always brought someone with her to read the ballot. And so she's like, I trust the person, but you never know. And so then I was like, there's headphones that you can use when you go vote. She's like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. I didn't know that. Just like, it's like, when in The Wizard of Oz, when everything goes from black and white to color. It was totally that situation. Yeah, so these are all good points. And you're kind of getting paid for the hassle. They're not. So, there you go. Preparing your polling place. So this kind of is talking about the physical accommodations or preparing your polling place in such a way that it is accessible to voters. Posting signs, we'll kind of get a little more in depth about specific signs, but basically they should be simple and clear and legible, easy to, what I would call plain language, so nothing too many syllables, too many letters, just simple to where like a kindergartner could understand it kind of. In and around the polling place, meaning you may need stuff with like, certain laws need to be posted, or, here's the accessible route, or here's where, here's the exit route, here's the entrance door. So there you go. Yeah. Clear paths. Everybody loves a clear, unobstructed path. Nobody wants to trip over everything or anything. Try to create you'll be doing this. I know y'all will, and you'll be doing it well, but just, when you're setting up when you're setting up the voting space, making sure that someone can get around pretty easily. There's not a lot of barriers in the way, or if you have wires that maybe have to go across the floor, seeing if you can put like some duct tape over it or something so it is not a potential tripping hazard, a little bit easier to overcome. And so just having enough space to move around. And then also sometimes even knowing that with, it's not on here, but it's on another slide, I think. With your check-in tables, even knowing like what proper height they can be, so like if someone is in a scooter or a wheelchair, that they're not going to get caught underneath it or over it when they're trying to lean over and sign something, stuff like that. And your staff will be there to help you. The county staff will be there to help you with that. This is partially why I'm here as well. I checked out the inside of voting spaces to make sure there's enough space to move around. And if there's any questions about how can I adequately do this if someone has full access, just call them, let them know. They can maybe call me if they have questions. I won't answer when they call. I've learned better, because then they ask me to come out. The whole thing. Yeah, so we just adequate clearance, making sure that the voter can approach the table and fit their device underneath the table probably. It's probably going to be a little more, or if they can put it over, like if, whatever, if they can still be over it and it's comfortable for them, great. Also, the thing about the voting booths, they need to be a little bit lower sometimes. So there's that. Set up and be familiar with your equipment. And I think this is the one. I'll do this real quick. And I think this may be the one with the video. I get a lot of calls across the state, not in El Paso yet, so good job, but about people who go vote and this is not the case with the voting machines y'all use because they're all accessible. But some people will go into a polling site and the accessible voting machine is not turned on. And so they have to take extra time to wait for the poll workers to turn them on, and they don't always know how to use those voting machines. And sometimes the voters have to show the poll workers how to use the machines, or they don't know of all the tools that are available on them. So that's happened before, and so I always just encourage people to turn on your voting machine at the beginning of the day. It seems like a simple task, but sometimes it's a big one. Make sure it's operational before the day starts. I think that's probably a part of your standardized checklist anyway, so there you go. And like I said, haven't heard any problems in El Paso, but just turn on those voting machines. Because if you're not turning them on, you probably got other problems going on anyway. Be familiar with how it works, and this is the video one. I'm going to play a video for you.
All voters have the right to use an accessible machine to mark their ballot in the polling place. These machines, called voter assist terminals, can also be used in the clerk's office for marking absent voter ballots in the days leading up to an election. The machine must be available and turned on wherever voting is taking place. To use the voter assist terminal, just ask. You do not need to say you have a disability or show any proof of a disability. The ES&S Express Vote has assistive tools that make it easier for voters with visual, hearing, mobility, or other disabilities to mark their ballots. Voting with this machine involves 3 steps: marking the ballot with the Express Vote, printing your card, and inserting it into the tabulator. This video will walk you through that process. At the polling place or in the clerk's office, let the election worker know that you'd like to use the Express Vote machine. You can say you'd like to use the accessible voting machine or the voter assist terminal. It should be located in an easy-to-access area where your voting privacy will be protected. For your health and safety, the machine should be at least 6 feet from other voting booths and other areas being used by voters. There should be ample space under and around the table for mobility devices. If you will be taking someone with you to assist you in casting your ballot, the election worker will verify that that person is not your employer or an agent of your union. You may also request that 2 election workers accompany you to help you cast your ballot. As you face the Express Vote machine, you will see the touchscreen, the card slot, and a black panel with 2 power indicators and 2 accessibility ports. The left port, beneath the symbol of access, is where assistive devices such as sip and puff or rocker switch may be connected. Any assistive device that can plug into Express Vote's 1/4-inch port may be used. Note that precincts will not provide sip and puff equipment. A rocker switch and connector cable may be available for you to use. Contact your local clerk's office to verify. The right port on the black panel is for headphones, which will already be plugged in. Headphones may be used together with the touchscreen or any other assistive devices that scroll and select. The Express Vote has an audio tactile keyboard for voters who do not use the touchscreen. It attaches to the left side of the console. The keypad is typically used with headphones and features audio controls in its lower right corner. The rectangular button at the bottom increases or decreases volume. The oval button just above it increases or decreases the speed at which the ballot and instructions are read. Just above that button, a circular repeat button may be pressed to repeat the last spoken phrase. A hexagonal pause button is located just to the left of the volume button. Pressing this pauses the audio message. Pressing it again will restart the message. In the top right corner of the keypad, a diamond-shaped button labeled Screen may be used to turn off the display completely, to keep your ballot and ballot selections private. Pressing it a second time will turn the display back on. There are 4 arrow-shaped buttons that you will press to navigate through the ballot. These surround a square button that you will press to make a selection. Forward and back arrows located to the right and left of the Select button advance to the next page or return to the previous one. Up and down arrows, which lie above and below the Select button, move the cursor up and down, highlighting each selectable element on the screen. A pentagon-shaped Home button in the bottom left of the keyboard may be pressed at any time to access instructions and help for the current page. The keypad's buttons are all labeled in Braille. To start a voting session on the Express Vote, you will need a long, rectangular card called an activation card. It will be coded with your ballot and precinct information. Some precincts use blank cards that are not encoded with this information. In this case, it is typical for an election worker to accompany you to the machine and select the correct ballot and precinct style. If you prefer to do this yourself, let the election worker know. They can provide you with the information you need to load the right ballot. Contact your local clerk if you'd like to know whether your jurisdiction uses pre-coded or blank cards. After you have applied to vote, you will be given an activation card. If the card does not have a ballot stub on it, the election worker will remove a ballot stub from a standard ballot and insert it into the pocket on the secrecy sleeve with your application to vote. The election worker will offer to activate the express vote for you. They will also offer to orient you in using the express vote and answer any questions you have. Do not hesitate to let them know what you need or to ask them to repeat instructions. You have the right to vote with or without assistance. Just tell the election worker what you require, and they will provide as much or as little help as you like. When the express vote screen reads, "To begin voting, insert your card," you or the election worker will insert your card into the front card slot. Insert the cut edge end first, cut side facing right. If your card was not already encoded, the precinct selection screen will come up. You may use the on-screen keypad to enter the full name of the precinct, but it is easier to select Search to pull up a short list of precincts, or to enter the first letter or two of your precinct, then select Search, which will return an even shorter list. If there's more than one ballot style being voted in your precinct, you will be prompted to select the correct ballot style. If multiple languages are supported for the election, the Select a Language screen will offer the ballot in 2 or more languages. Select the language you prefer. Your ballot should now be loaded, and the Start Voting button will be available on the screen. If an election worker has assisted you in loading the ballot, they might ask if you would like any further help. Otherwise, they will leave you to cast your ballot privately. You can always ask for assistance during any step of the voting process. Select Start Voting. If you'd like to adjust the display settings, use the main navigation bar at the bottom of the touchscreen. Select the Zoom icon to adjust font size, and Contrast if you'd like to change the display to black with white text. To adjust audio settings using the Audio Tactile keyboard, use the Volume and Tempo buttons. If you are not using the touchscreen at all, you may press the keypad's Screen button to completely darken it. At the top right of the touchscreen, the Help icon can provide voting instructions, including instructions on adjusting audio and display settings. From the keypad, press the Home button to hear this information. To navigate within the ballot, use the Next and Previous button on the main navigation bar. These will move the ballot from one contest to another. From the keypad, use forward and back arrows. Each screen displays the name of the office or proposal and will tell you the maximum number of choices to select. For example, the instructions may tell you, "Vote for one." To vote for a candidate or proposal, touch your choice or press the Select button on the keypad once it is highlighted or spoken. Those using the touch screen will see a check mark on their selections. If there is an option to enter a write-in candidate, select the Write-in button. Using the on-screen keypad that appears, enter the candidate's name, then select Accept. The write-in name will display next to Write-in with a check mark. If there are more choices in a contest that can fit on the screen, a More navigation bar at the bottom of the screen will become available, just above the main navigation bar. Selecting More will reveal more choices. In some contests, you're allowed to select more than one candidate. For example, the instructions might tell you, select no more than 2 candidates. If you don't select the maximum number of candidates allowed, 2 in this example, you will be alerted that you have undervoted before you leave the contest. If you want to select the maximum number, you may return to that contest by following the instructions on the alert message. If you are using a rocker switch or a sip and puff, you will use one action to scroll through all the elements on the screen and another action to select. ES&S's rocker switch uses the No button to scroll clockwise and the Yes button to highlight. To select using this device, you must hit Yes a second time. Your sip and puff device will scroll clockwise through all the elements on a screen with sips. Elements will be highlighted when you land on them. Puff once to select. If you are using headphones together with any assistive device other than the keypad, only use the keypad to adjust audio settings or to blacken the screen, not to scroll or select. At any point during the voting process, you may abandon your session by selecting the exit icon located on the main navigation bar. Selecting exit will eject your unmarked card from the machine. Be aware that if you leave your session, your ballot selections will not be recorded. When you have made selections for all contests on the ballot, the Verify Selections screen will load. All your choices will be listed for you to review before printing. If you wish to change your choice for any contest, simply select that choice to return to the contest and make a different choice. The Verify Selections screen will load an alert if any contest was undervoted. If you wish to make additional selections in that contest, you can navigate back to it by simply selecting your choice for that contest. To return to the Verify Selections screen after you've made changes, select Next. The changes you made will be highlighted on the screen. If you're happy with your choices as shown on the Verify Selections screen, you may end your voting session by printing your ballot. Select Next, and you will be prompted to print your card. Once you select the Print Card button, your voting session will end, and your card will eject from the card slot. It will be printed with a summary of your selection below a barcode that records those selections for the tabulator to read. The Express Vote screen will now load a message that your votes have been successfully cast. After printing, it is no longer possible to make changes to your ballot. If you wish to change your ballot, an election worker will help you through the process of spoiling your ballot and starting over. If you would like to review your selections again, you may reinsert your card into the slot to view or listen to your ballot choices. When you are ready, place your card in the secrecy sleeve and head toward the table on the way to the tabulator. At this table, an election worker will collect either the stub from your card or the standard ballot stub that you received when you applied to vote. They will also collect your application to vote and verify that your stub number matches the number on your application. If you'd like help putting your ballot into the tabulator, let the election worker know. Otherwise, insert your ballot into the tabulator and deposit the secrecy sleeve into the collection bin. We hope that you have found this video guide instructive. Remember that your vote matters, and you have the right to vote with or without assistance.
I think we're done for the day, right? You figured it all out. It was a little long, but I wanted to show it because I think it was good to kind of provide kind of an oral and a visual representation of how to actually use a lot of these tools on the machines. And keep in mind that not all of it is applicable because it's a Michigan thing, but the gist of it was overall correct. So if any of you ever had any questions about some of the intricacies of the machine, I hope some of that got answered for you. So have your accessible supplies available, and that's not just the tools that are on the voting machine. Sometimes it can also be an extra notepad and a writing utensil in case someone needs to write down something for you. Or if you have, sometimes, well, y'all have electronic ebooks, right? Y'all don't do paper anymore. So I was going to say sometimes using signature guides is really helpful when they need to sign stuff. But since you have the e-poll books, that kind of does it itself. But also, you know, and I guess just some extra writing utensils for assistants if they need to sign anything. Is that done electronically or is that paper? Oh, man, that's awesome. Oh, a little bit of everything. Okay.
You need to come back and
I do. Yes.
So something that we do in the county, and I believe we're the only county county created it in Texas right now, is a braille screen for the whole
Oh, yeah.
Braille screen for
Yeah.
poll workers.
It's wonderful.
Yes.
Good job. It's awesome, huh? I'm impressed. Why didn't you tell me that when I like landed? That, I mean, yes. Oh, man. Good job. Yes.
We are into it.
You are into it. Y'all are like bounds and leaps ahead of a lot of counties. I'm impressed. Good job. Yes, go El Paso. Vive El Paso. Who told you? Somebody narked out. Somebody. It was me, wasn't it? Yes.
I don't know if I'm mistaken, but at the very end you said that they can review their ballot by inserting again?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Is
And-
that, can they do that?
Well, remember, this was a Michigan video, so not everything applies to our county.
Okay, that's what I was asking.
Now, some places you can do that, but generally speaking, once you make your selections, they'll review it at the end. And sometimes, when it's printed out, you can stick it back in just to double check.
Not here. Not in El Paso.
Oh, okay, not in El Paso. Okay. Yeah, but it gives you the summary ahead of time. And I think it's like a double layered system, so it should be good.
What was the question, Molly?
It gives you a summary that you can't stick it back into the, once the selection is made and it's printed out, although you've approved it. Yeah.
Spoil that activation card and go with you.
Okay. You got to spoil it and do it again. Right. And if you need to, you can change it on that summary that they read to you before it's printed out.
Prior to before.
Yeah. Before it's printed, yes.
The thing is after the card is actually, the ballot is already
Right.
printed out, you can take it out. And I want to review this again, you can insert it again, correct?
Not for the El Paso County.
Review it on the, yeah, you can
Right,
review it.
on the.
The machine, as it was made, as ES&S made it, you can do that, but not every county has that applicability. Thank you, the function, yes. Yes, ma'am.
Make sure when you're giving them the overall of what to do and how to do it, that at the very end, make sure you go over everything
Yes.
that's on there.
Always, and I always do that too as a voter. I just double check, especially because sometimes I'll skip an election that I don't know too much about. And so I always make it a point to read that summary at the end and make sure it's everything that I picked. That's a great tool that now exists for that. Oh, what did I say here? Extra chairs are handy. So know that, and I think I'll talk about that a little bit later. But if someone needs to sit down because they cannot stand for long periods of time, they have the right to do that, and their spot in line is saved. But have some extra chairs hanging out so they can sit on the chair and not on the floor. Because even if you're able-bodied like I am, getting off the floor is still really hard. So it takes a lot of different positions for me to rally myself up. Yes, lots of chairs. And not rolly chairs, if you can avoid it. Just non-wheelie chairs. It does. Some people, we've done that where it's like they just kind of roll over to, when their spot in line comes up, they just roll over to the check-in table and then they get up and.
Use it as a walker?
Yeah. So actually, there you go. Look at using your tools. I love it. Yes, sir.
We have a man that comes in and he uses a cane.
Okay.
He's crippled.
Yes.
But he gets around town in a truck.
Oh, nice.
And, at one time, because he doesn't like to do the person.
Okay.
He wants to come in.
Yeah.
And at one time, we put him on a chair, and we actually wheeled him out.
See, it works. Use what works, man.
But he
Yeah.
does like to walk.
Yeah. And some people,
That's what I'm saying.
that's really important. Yeah, that sufficiency.
Yeah, feel that,
Absolutely.
they can do it.
Absolutely. If I try to, even today, if I ask my mom if she needs help, I get smacked. So
It's her right.
it's her right.
She brought you in.
Yeah.
She can take you out.
I'm sure I deserved it, even karmically or from like 20 years ago. I'm sure, yeah. Maybe not 20 years ago, a little further than that. So this is just kind of a summary of what we've been talking about. Just remember about the hidden disabilities and the tips about service animals or best practices. You know, every individual knows what works best for them, and if they don't, we get to figure it out together, you know. So there you go. Right to accessibility. Is that what we're doing? Yep, right to access. So this is going to talk about a lot of the accommodations, and I think a lot of the questions I was hearing in the break, or we're going to address a lot of those coming up. But an interesting question came up in accordance to accommodating tools for voting machines, and I want to bring it up real quick. There was mention of a sip and puff device. And if you're not familiar with what a sip and puff device is, the best way I can relate is does anybody remember Christopher Reeve, Superman? Okay. Fondly, apparently. Some of us remember him fondly. We remember after he got in his accident and he was wheelchair bound and he had a little thing that he blew into. That is what I would refer to as a sip and puff device. That exists for individuals to mark things or move around if needed if they don't have the necessary ability to do so with their limbs. So in terms of voting, what that looks like is they will use a sip and puff device to mark the ballot. Now, the county has one sip and puff device. It's an expensive item. They have one sip and puff device for the county. So if that is something that a voter needs at your polling site, let them know and they can bring it to you. Otherwise, my other rule is, or my other guidance is, most people who use a sip and puff device may have one that they can just plug into the machine. And if that's the case, they can just plug it into where the wheelchair icon is on the machine, and they should be able to do what they need to do then. So, good question. Thank you for bringing that up. Maybe y'all could do like a bake sale and get funds for another sip and puff device. Just saying. Hey, you could hook up with the donut place. Do like, they can give you a proceed of sales. So we're going to talk about your basic accessibility, and I think some of the law changes that have happened recently. When we talk about accessibility, this is kind of the legal parts of everything. When I talk about the Americans with Disabilities Act, or when it comes up in conversations, we're talking about, there's a lot of different sections, but there's Title II, and that is the accessibility version with local governments and entities like that. So that is what we're referring to. Those are the rules that help support all of this. The Americans with Disabilities Act, oh, this one, watch this. This is such an important part of my life. Whoever answers this question is going to get 2 goodies. So, I know you'll probably know this, so I'll just grab someone randomly. The Americans with Disabilities Act, what is that? Who knows what that is? Yes, sir.
That's the law that governs all the practices and.
Here we go. There you go.
It's the law that regulates or all the requirements of practice.
Oh, it's my user fault, yeah. So, I'm not good at this, so we may just have to. Technical errors. Oh, look, there it is. Now it's working. Now you can really hear me. But his answer was, it's the laws that exist to help enforce people's ability. I mean, it's an equity thing, basically. I'll go on my riff and say that it is the civil rights legislation for the disability community. You consider the Civil Rights Movement or Act of 1965, if I have my rights. It is basically the equivalent of that for the disability community. That is the legislation that said that you have to be able to, provide access to people to get into buildings. I mean, it's who, couldn't even get into buildings. My goodness. It is what my coworkers have fought so hard for their entire lives for. And so to find that this now exists, we're a little over 30 years, I think, at this point. But it is important legislation. It helps ensure that people have equal access to things, not, that they can live their lives just like we're all entitled to live. So it's an important part of my job. It's an important part of a lot of people's lives. It's an important part of why I get to be here today. So we love it. But that's what we refer to when I say ADA, I mean the Americans with Disabilities Act. And as much as I put an emphasis on it to just now, I'm sure I did not give it enough weight for someone who was actually there crawling up the Capitol steps doing it. So, because that's what they literally did. They crawled up the Capitol steps in DC. So, accessibility. It is defined as a means of approach or admission. The opposite of accessibility would be segregation, basically. So just think about that. It is just accessibility is about allowing everybody to do what they need to do. And I generally am not fond of segregation, so I don't promote that idea. We also get a lot of questions about, oh, here, you get the swag. Good job. Yeah, he was like, what the heck? Where's my... I really love it. I got it all, and I want it to be that way. When I get home, this is all going away, so I got it. So, what about churches? I get a lot of questions about that. What about churches and their ability? Do they have to be accessible? Do they not have to be accessible? And my answer to you is, generally speaking, without the world of elections, churches are separate from state laws, so they do not have to be, they are not required to be accessible. But when they are involved in federal elections, they do need to be accessible. And so that's when we come into play of if I'm inspecting a polling site that is a church, and there are certain things that are not accessible, and they have an issue with it, we have to have the conversation. It's like, well, if you don't like it, then we're going to move this election somewhere else because you have to fix it. And that's the general rule about polling sites. If it is not fixed, it needs to be, or it is not in the movement of being fixed, it needs to be, that polling site needs to be relocated. Because it is the law that all of polling places must be physically accessible. We talked about that. Cool. Rights, voter rights and accommodations. This is all pretty straightforward. I bet y'all know a lot of this already. Voters have the right to a physically accessible polling site. They have the right to use the accessible voting machine if they need to. They have the right to assistance. They have the right to a reasonable accommodation or modification. And they have the right to curbside voting if that is what they request. So, right to assistance. This is useful stuff. Providing support to a voter. This comes up a lot about questions, especially with SB 1 that came across. There was a lot of limits put on what kind of help can provide, and there's been law changes, so hopefully we can clear this up a little bit. It always comes up. So what kind of support can a voter receive? A ballot can be read to the voter. So if they are receiving support from someone, the ballot can be read to them. They can be directed to I'm going to figure out how to talk in a minute. Hold on. You can direct the voter to read the ballot. You can mark the voter's ballot for them if that is what they want. You can direct the voter to mark the ballot. So if they need prompting and knowing like where their selection is, they can be prompted on how to do that. They can be asked questions or cued to certain areas of the ballot if that's what they need, or other support-related assistance, questions or whatever. Basically, this is being said, no two people are alike, so no two forms of assistance are alike. And I think there was a lot of questions in the last couple of years about what is legit assistance and what is not legit assistance. And basically, I'll talk about it in a little bit. But there were limits put on the types of assistance one could receive after SB 1 happened. Then the judge came in and said, actually, no, you can provide, a voter can receive whatever types of assistance they need, even if it's not within the spectrum that SB 1 says. So all these things that I talked about in the types of support, that can be offered to the voter. That can be given to them. So there's that. What cannot be offered is if the voter doesn't want assistance at all, they shouldn't have to receive it. And then also preparing the ballot, if the assistant prepares a ballot in such a way that the voter does not want it done, that's a problem. So the ballot has to be prepared in a way that the voter wants it to be done. Let's see. Yes, ma'am, you have a question. Let me bring this to you. See if I from here to there if I can figure out how to work this the right way. Oh, hello. Hello? Okay, I guess you have to hold it close. Here you go.
Does that mean that a person assisting them can actually touch the voter machine and mark their ballot for them?
Yes. That's a good question. So it is, can the assistant mark the ballot, touch the machine and mark the ballot for the voter? Correct? The answer is yes, if that's what the voter wants. If that's their form of assistance that they need, then that can, as long as it's reflecting what the voter wants, then they can do that. Because we've always been told previously that they just don't touch the ballot, just don't mark it for them. That's not the case anymore. You can now mark the ballot for the voter if that's what they want, and as long as you're doing it in the way that they want you to do it.
Because there's been a lot of issue about that.
Yeah, and I think that there's still people still kind of are on the idea that just don't touch the ballot, and you're good. So I think we're having to do a lot of education about, no, you can mark the ballot for the voter now. And so people are still kind of caught on that idea that you can't mark it, but you can. So it's just, I gotta go out more and do more of my job, so,
But
yes.
there was an issue about that at my polling place about 2-3 years ago,
Okay,
where they saw the person marking the ballot, and she kept asking that person not to do it.
okay. So if that is the case, if you see someone, if it's obvious that the assistant is marking the ballot and doing what the voter does not want them to do, correct me if I'm wrong, staff, county staff. Hey, y'all need to stop gossiping and listen to what I'm asking you. That's right, y'all, you, no more donuts for you. This is what happens. You get hopped up on sugar and you feel like you don't have to listen to me. So just whatever, no. Know better, do better. The question was, if the assistant is not marking the ballot, if the assistant is marking the ballot and the voter does not want them to do that, what can be done? And I would say, and I wanted to get y'all's stance on this before I said anything. So what would your answer be? So I'll ask again. So let's say someone is, or if you want to say it again, I'm happy to give you the mic. I don't want to speak for you. But basically the question was, there's a vote.
That person wanted it marked or whatever, we couldn't tell. So we just told them to stop marking the ballot for that person.
So that is a little bit different. If you don't know it's that what they want or not, you got to just let it happen. If it is obvious that an assistant is not providing the type of help that the voter wants, you probably need to intervene at that point.
That's at the time, like, we always go over training, you intervene, because they took an oath of assistance. So you remind them that their job is just to read what's on the ballot and mark what's on the ballot. It's not working?
Here. This is going to be like
So
it's going to be like the Maury Povich show.
Trainings that
Is it so?
I think.
it's not working.
I don't.
Yes.
He doesn't like her.
When an assistant is assisting a voter, correct? And they're marking the ballot for the voter, right? And you see that they are marking the ballot however they want. They're not even asking the voter how the voter wants to vote or what their selections are. At that time, they are not following the oath of assistance, correct? So then at that time, the poll worker intervenes, and you remind them that they need to follow the oath of assistance as required by state law. If they still continue, because you gave them a verbal warning, what do? We take over, correct? Does that answer your question? Yes? Yeah, that is the same thing. They're not following the oath of assistance. Yes, so at that time, that's when you give them a verbal warning because you don't want to take over, without even giving them over a warning. And then if they continue, then you tell them, sir, ma'am, I need you to step outside. I'll go ahead and take over from now on. And that can be one of the poll workers, judge or clerks.
Tell me another job,
Yeah, well, yeah, and then that's when the judge steps in, and also if the other judge is seeing that the other judge is violating the code, then judges, remember, you step in. If they are continue doing that throughout the days, throughout the, the whole early voting period or on election day, you call us, and then that's when we handle that situation.
You tell them that you're going to call Lisa on them, and then Lisa will come out, and it'll be like when you call Dad up and you got to get in trouble.
Molly, there's a lot of hands.
Oh, there's a lot of questions. Okay, well, hold on. Let me get this situated so where you don't have to be up and it's.
Hello, 1, 2, 3.
Oh, now since I did my strip tease. All right. Yes, ma'am.
Three.
Can we go back to the previous slide? Can you go back to the previous?
This right to assistance.
Number 2 says, if the voter does not have someone they trust to assist them, 2 election workers can assist. So are we saying, is that saying that we have to have 2 of us go down to assist one person?
Well, it's more for the curbside, remember?
Oh, it's
Curbside
just
is
for
one takes,
curbside.
correct.
Okay, it's just for
It's a process
serve.
of 2.
Okay, just for curbside.
Yeah, it's a good question. So just for curbside, but if you're inside voting, it's one election worker. Good question about assistance. Okay. All right. I'm coming to you, Miss Stone, and then I'm going to come back. Oh, you're closer. And I'm going to come to you, and I'm coming to you. I'm going to make it an efficient trip. And then there's her. Okay.
So if they continue doing the voting, do we cancel that ballot and start again?
Are you addressing that question to me? What was the question again?
You're saying that we give them a warning, and then if they continue, we stop them and ask them to leave the premises, and do we cancel that ballot? And
Take over. You just take over.
We don't
depending on
cancel
where
the
they
ballot.
are at. Because if the ballot is still on the screen, you just take over wherever they're at.
You can usually review.
Yeah.
So kick that other person aside. Don't do that, really. And then say, yeah, I'm taking over. And gently, and nicely, lure them away with a donut. Who doesn't love donuts? Yes, all right, we have other questions.
Okay, in getting the person out and redoing or taking over at the time, we can put the exit on the machine and it'll give us the card back and reinsert it so it can be,
Just take over wherever they're at. Every scenario is going to be different.
at the end.
Because what if they already printed the activation card and they don't like the selections on the card, then at that time you spoil it. Again, it all depends on where you're at in the process.
Okay, thank you.
All right, one more question. I think we have like 5 minutes left. This has been fantastic. I'll give 3 minutes. All right, there was a question. Where did it go? It was you. You didn't. You changed your mind. I walked. Oh, okay. She doesn't need a microphone. Okay. Oh, okay.
Question, Melissa. It's for you, yes, I know. What's it called?
They're not going to pay
So we have
me
one voter
if you keep asking her
that
questions.
that takes their assistant with them, okay? The voter doesn't speak, doesn't see, doesn't do, but every time we tell the assistant not to touch it, and we step over it, then the voter cancels the ballot and says that they only wanted that assistant. So is it okay if we let them just go on their way?
I mean, at that time, remember, it's up to the voter, in other words. You know, and if they say, well, I don't want you, I want this assistant, and I want them to help me the way they're helping me,
Then we allow it?
Yes.
Okay.
So we're trying to talk, unfortunately, man, y'all are so engaged and I love it. But we're running out of time. So there are There's sections that talk about the types of assistance you can receive, but I also want to hit maybe the new voter priority thing. How it happened previously was that if a person asked for the notice of voting order priority, thank you. If a person asked for assistance, it was up to the precinct judge. If they asked to be moved to the front of the line, the precinct judge could decide if they did that or not. Now it is basically saying, if a voter asks for us to be moved to the front of the line, you got to move them to the front of the line. And I've been getting a lot of questions about now, can we go and like point people out and like go ask them, do you want to be moved to the front of the line? And then if we're doing that, is that bad because we're assuming that person, you know, has a disability or they want to move to the front of the line? I will say that at my polling, when we serve as a polling site, what we do is kind of just go to the line and say if anybody's having problems standing up for long periods of time, or if they, you know, need assistance of any kind, let us know, and then I'll have a precinct judge come talk to you. And that's a conversation that can then happen with the judge and the voter, and you can move them to the front of the line and maybe avoid any, you know, pointing out of individuals specifically. Because sometimes people don't always know. And sometimes you may assume that they want, this has happened to me, where I've, you know, gone to somebody, my poor mom, dragging her through the dirt again. I ask her if she needs help, and she's like, no, I don't need no stinking help. I'm going to do this my way. And so then you just let her do it because she's mom, and who's going to say otherwise? So that's what basically, so now it's basically saying they can move to the front of the line. It's not up to the precinct judges anymore. It'll happen. And the goal behind that was just to increase accessibility and other things when they wrote the law. Curbside voting. Y'all will be reviewing this. Basically, how it currently, what Texas law said was, well, there was nothing requiring curbside voting, designated curbside voting spots in Texas election code. Now it says a curbside voting spot, a designated curbside voting spot must be created in addition to the existing accessible parking spots. So up to one spot. So if you have like 3 accessible parking spaces, you need to create another curbside voting spot. And the thought behind that is because if people need that accessible parking space, they can still use it. If they're voting, if they're going into that business for business purposes, they can still use it for what it's there for. You're not taking away that need just for curbside voting. So there's going to be an additional curbside voting spot. It's going to need its own specific signage, and there's going to be an alert system created. It's in the works. Don't worry. Yes, sir.
Should it be in a handicap spot?
So the question is, should the curbside spot be in a handicap spot? No, it has to be a non-handicap spot. So, you know, if you think about that, if you're working at the same site that you were last time, what may be a good spot? And even if you have windows in your polling site, what could be a good spot that you see curbside voting at? If the curbside parking spot is not respected, what do you do? Then you call a tow truck. I don't know. The question was, can you call a tow truck? I would say that sounds, I bet the tow truck wouldn't get there in time. If you know who the car belongs to, if you can connect the voter in the car, you know, I would probably just say someone's in my spot and someone's in the curbside spot, they're not using it for curbsides. If you need, I encourage you need to move it. We'll save your spot in line. Go move the car. That would be the most like non-confrontational way to deal with it. I don't know if y'all have any thoughts on the matter. Your location is a mall. Okay.
We tried doing it before where we put the cones and it's never been respected. And yet I get those angry voters because I have a car from all the way over there.
Right. For curbside.
For curbside.
I think we're talking about that actually right now, about how that's going to be accomplished. My easy solution would be we're going to just get some high school volunteers and have them monitor those spots.
And that's something that we've been
We're trying to figure it out.
days, just because it's a new law that is being implemented statewide. So we were talking talking about suggestions, feedback from other counties on how they're gonna do it. So we're playing with the idea of having like greeters again, but just specifically to be checking like, you know, the curbside parking being available and along like other solutions for like opening the door for those locations that need a greeter in the front door, especially with the schools. But that's something that we're gonna discuss, you know, now that we're finalizing our inspections with Ms. Lisa Weiss to see what the solution will be. But it's something that we are talking about it.
And I think my general summation for that would be, because a lot of questions across the state have been popping up around it, and my answer is, it is a new law, and everybody's trying to figure out how it's going to work out in real life. So we're figuring it out. And what may be happening in this election, it may be a completely different routine next election. I think it's just we're figuring out what works best. But if you have any good ideas, let the staff know. They're always receiving that stuff. So that's it. I've gone over my time. And there we are. Thank you so much. If y'all, yes.